This is the actual playthrough for the Battle of Alcañiz. I've broken the battle into chapters corresponding to the start of the French turns. If you really want to get to the meat of this battle, I'd watch the first turn, the third, and then the 10th through the 15th, because that's where all the good stuff actually happens. I have attempted to use the jump map rather than scrolling to provide a more fluid battle and a better viewing experience. Please leave your comments below so that I can improve this video. This is my first attempt at a battle report of this kind and won't be the last. I will zoom in on portions of the battlefield even though it's an editing chore so you can see the action as it happens. I use a large screen when I'm doing my war games because I can see better and I can actually see the flow of the battle better. When I'm gaming by myself, I normally just scroll with the keys, but this time I'm going to use the jump map rather than that because it will provide a more fluid battle so you can see what's going on. Here's a review of the tactical plan. In the north, that's a secondary attack, but the brigade that's up there will attack and they will hold on to that objective that's there. The main effort will go against the Spanish center, with the French attempting to conduct an envelopment of that Spanish position on the heights. The secondary attack will start with me moving the skirmish companies up to take on the Spanish skirmish companies. Then I'll move the remainder of the brigade up to attack that unit that's in line right at the edge of the woods. Directly behind that brigade is a brigade commander who's the artillery commander, along with the foot battery and a unit of a supply train. Those will move up to the south of the woods so that they can stay within reach of the brigade units. The unit on the road is the cavalry brigade. They will move in column of march with a special command. Click on the first unit in the stack, hold down the Alt key, and then click to the front of it, and that brigade will move in column and get the benefit of the road. I then move that artillery unit, the last unit, up one hex so that it would be protected and not left out hanging to dry in midair. I try to move units in a pattern from north to south and then conduct the firing after all units have moved. This just helps me keep track of the battle and the flow better. The center is where the battle will be really slow because you have to develop your movement plan. Moving this corps up with the supporting unit so it's in a successful attack position is difficult because you have so many moving parts. The single squadron of Lancers, which is only about 60 men, will move ahead on the road and then position itself to the south as a screen for observation purposes. You can see me checking lines of sight here so I can see what the cavalry can observe. The supply train has moved forward, but I'm going to move this skirmish unit and the foreign battalion, which are the quartermaster guard, up so it will be the escort for the supply train. Now we get into the close combat. The formed French units in the north are all attacking in column. I did this intentionally so I could have the weight of the units on my side. First up will be the two skirmish companies attacking the Spanish skirmish company in the southern part of the woods. This is designed to get that southern company out of supporting distance of the Spanish line unit I'll be attacking, but it doesn't work out that way. Fortunately, the brigade attack goes in successfully and forces those Spanish units out of their prepared positions. Now it's time for the Spanish response. Fortunately for the French, there's just a whole lot of running going on in the northern sector, and in the south, the Spanish move some of the cavalry up so they can observe the French movements. One of the drawbacks of trying to record this battle is that the screen will jump around based upon where the Spanish player is actually moving their units. It can be quite distracting, particularly if you're trying to use a smaller map so you can zoom in on sections of the battle. Now we have Spanish defensive fire going against the brigade that just made that friendly assault. Fortunately, none of the French units routed, and one of the units even recovered from disorder that it suffered moving into the woods. In the north, the Spanish skirmisher company routes. The French plan in the north continues to move forward. Artillery and trains are moved to the top of a ridge. The hussars can't charge, but they move forward to attack a routing unit. Then I made an error because I didn't understand the rules. I thought, having run the hussar movement almost out, I was safe to move the cavalry brigade along the road, but the hussars pulled in as a rear guard when I tried this trick about moving the unit as a whole. Using the jump map, I moved the screen to the south so I could move the corps main body. The terrain constricted the movement because this stream runs out right before it runs into the orchards. I did not want to cross the stream and suffer the disruption that would have occurred, so I had to move everyone through the choke point between the stream end and the orchards. Attack movement is the second type of formation movement within the engine, but this style is designed for your use for moving your forces once they're deployed for battle. You use the shift right-click command, and they'll move in formation on the field. Supply wagons are used to support forces on the map. Each unit of strength for a supply unit can resupply 10 men. If a unit is low on ammunition or out of ammunition, they can only fire defensive fire. These units also suffer a morale penalty. Units can be resupplied if they can trace an uninterrupted path of 5 hexes to a supply unit. Now it's on to the melee phase. I chose to attack with the entire brigade against this artillery and infantry unit out in the open so I could destroy the artillery battery. This was a decisive win, but I took more losses than I had anticipated. The Spanish in the south have started to reform their lines on their left flank. In the north, the Spaniards have moved back from the brigades of death, and one of the battalions has disappeared from view. I wonder if the town is their fallback position. Firing continues, and the Spanish look like they're reorganizing their defenses. The good news is that more of my units have reformed and are now at full combat capability. Given the success of the infantry attack in the north, I want to see if I can speed the Spanish along. This hex contains a routed battalion of 500 and 2 leaders, and cavalry loves a pursuit, so the hussars are turning and moving. With luck, that will be a load of victory points. The skirmish company moves toward the town as a reconnaissance, and the infantry brigade moves along the edge of the woods. The 2 southernmost battalions will attempt to finish off the line company that is trying to form a solid line in the open. Using the jump map, I move back to the south to continue deploying the main attack. I'm doing my best to keep these units that are moving outside of musketry range, which is 2 hexes. That way they don't take casualties and they don't suffer from disorder as early as they're going to once they make the assault. I am attempting to keep the brigades together with their leaders and have the corps and division commander stay within range of these units, so the leadership benefits will flow down to the appropriate units. There are two other things that I normally do when I'm playing this game. The first is to turn off all the background noises and the music. I really know what's happening and it just bothers me, so I don't like to have it on. The second is that I turn off all the labels for the towns and some of the objectives. I find that to be distracting and it covers up terrain I need to see. You can see the effect that this choke point has on the movement of the corps main body. It's now strung out a lot more than I had wanted. Unfortunately, my attacks in the north are not a runaway success. They do succeed in forcing the Spanish to retreat and continue to open up the path to that northern objective. Now it's on to the Spanish turn, and it looks like they have a surprise in store. It's a spoiling attack by one leader and one battalion. This could be either good for me or throw a monkey wrench into the works. The Spanish now engage in a firefight with one of the battalions that's in the lead. The real pain for me is going to come because of the artillery fire from the heights. That will have a deleterious effect on my units in the next turn. Things are going well so far. The first part of this turn in the south is taken up by my maneuvering units into position so I can have maximum combat power against that unit that stood out from the line. Spanish artillery and infantry, however, continue to fire at the French units that are down in the valley beneath the heights occupied by the Spanish. Suchet, along with the division commander, brigade commander, and the 1st Brigade, move up along that road so that they can position themselves to begin the assault on the heights. The cavalry corps moves down the road, and I also then check the visibility from where the artillery battery ends up so that I can see if I can unlimber them and fire at that infantry unit in the open. I can, so I do, and not much. Now it's time to move the remainder of the supply trains forward and establish my line. In the north, the skirmish company moves forward and seizes the town, which is that northern objective. The other units in the brigade move forward so they can attack that unit that's in line that looks like it's threatening the town. The cavalry then moves to the south to attempt to rejoin the remainder of the corps. In this melee phase, I'm trying to determine if I need to move the entire brigade with the brigade commander against that unit that's in the open to force them out, or if I can get by with a smaller part. My decision is to commit the entire unit. In the end, that decision worked out okay. I did not destroy the entire Spanish unit, but I forced it back, probably routed it, and have the remainder of the brigade ready to move up to support the skirmish company in the town. The attack in the south now goes in. It turns out to be pretty successful, inflicting 3 times the number of Spanish casualties as French casualties and forcing them back. Now it's time for the Allied response. In the north, the Spanish just disappear. I'll take that as a good sign, as I think it means a lot of their units are routing and they're going to have to pull back and regroup before they can make a concerted attack. In the south, a number of the Spanish units pull back behind the heights. The artillery then begins a concerted bombardment against the French advance. Now it's the Allied melee phase, and oh no! And the French attack collapses. There is no quick fix to this problem. It will take at least 2 turns to get the attack turned around and back on the rails. So now the regrouping begins. In the north, the supply train detaches itself from the road column and heads towards the northern objective to support that attack. A battalion moves south to protect the supply train as it's moving up. The northern brigade moves forward to do a reconnaissance in force, and once they get to the edge of the woods, they discover where all the Spaniards have gone. They have routed or pulled back and are now regrouping and getting ready to close and attempt to retake the town. And now it's time for the Chinese fire drill. All the commanders who are available rush to the rear to help reorganize and recover all of these units that have run away. The cavalry corps continues its move towards the main effort and continue to move down the road. The foot artillery battery and the commander move to join the cavalry. So now we have all of these units packed into an area that now it's the Spanish turn to play. As you can see, what they do is they reorganize some in the north and they move up to begin some very intermittent musketry fire against the French brigade they can see. In the south, they continue their artillery bombardments, which is actually historical for the period. And then another disaster happens. More units rout. For those who might be curious, this is not a typical sequence of events for this specific scenario. Here's a good look at the overall tactical situation at the start of turn 6. The French player, me, does not look very impressive here, as I've only taken 1 objective out of the 4 that are available. The guarded supply train has moved up towards the town, and 2 of the battalions that are with the brigade commander are doing a reconnaissance down to the lower right of the screen. There they discover 2 skirmish companies, which is about 200 men. I had to do a lot of clicking around on units to find out what their morale status was. I cut a lot of that out so that you don't have to suffer through it. Upon review, the situation looked salvageable, so I decided to carry on with my plan. The cavalry mission now became one of avoiding combat and moving to the objectives down on the river. The infantry would attack the linchpin of the enemy's defenses, and commanders would do their best to try to catch all the shirkers and runners and bring them back into formation. Again, this is a relatively small area, so I can actually see this happening as people are trying to pull things together and put units in line where they can defend and protect those that are actually starting to reform. The Corps commander is staying up in the front lines to control the action. The division commander is running to the rear to help support that brigade commander and see if he can catch those 2 battalions that are trying to squirt off to the left. The supply trains move off to a more protected position where they're behind that stream and also behind a brigade and a half of infantry. And now it's the French melee phase and time for some admittedly small payback. The French brigade that I moved down now attacks the Spaniards who are attempting to outflank the town. You'll notice they take defensive fire from other units as they close and try to charge. The attack is a success, and so now it will let me shore up the lines up here defending that objective while the enemy are pulled back and attempting to regroup. Now it's the Spanish turn, so there may be some map flipping and movement that I can't compensate for. The Spanish have their hands full trying to put together anything that will be a viable threat now to that northern objective, so this has become a secondary part of this battle. There is combat by fire going on in both sections of this battle now, and the French continue to be under bombardment from the artillery on the hills. I have to do something about that quickly. This is the good news part of the turn. The work of the commanders has not gone unrewarded. As I said before, in the north I'm going on the defensive. Here I'm using the line of sight command to actually verify what these units can see and check and see if I need to move them or redeploy them. I'll be taking defensive fire as I actually move and redeploy. The brigade commander moves up so that he can be in a central location and better be positioned for command. The supply train and the protecting battalion will move up one with the ultimate goal of moving them into the town. The skirmish company moves to the left flank to screen on that area. Back in the south, I'm still trying to reconstitute my line so that I can go on the offensive. One of the interesting things about the game is you can actually take routing units and move them closer to your own units rather than having them go directly to a board edge. This makes command and control much easier. Here you can see me checking the chain of command for a specific commander so I can see how close his units are. I will be moving a lot of combat power around that screening peak so that I can maintain the advantage on that left flank. I don't know what's down on the river yet because I haven't been able to expose anything to see it. Now, however, I can see what I'm actually going to be facing, and it looks like it's going to be an opposed river crossing. The Spanish left flank has already started withdrawing into the town of Alcañiz. Now I'll check for the division and brigade commanders' command radius so I can see who they can rally and who they can affect. I need to move the division commander down. The commander of the 1st Brigade will move back to the woods to see if he can rally those routing units. The French have no close combat to resolve, so we move on to the Spanish turn. The most significant move is that of the Spanish cavalry moving to my right flank to try to threaten that unit of lancers that's out in the open. There is a lot of Spanish repositioning right now. One opportunity is that it looks like they're moving all of their supplies trains down to the south to get it out of the way of the oncoming French offensive. In the north, it looks like the Spanish have managed to retain enough combat power to actually be a threat to that northern objective. The rain of death from the artillery continues apace, and it does have its effect on the French advance. And here we can see the effects of the artillery. Yet another battalion goes running off towards the woods. At least they're going to end up by their brigade commander when they stop. In my part of the movement phase, I attempt to move the units around that northern objective to help re-solidify the line and protect that one from the Spanish, who are reorganizing and attempting to retake the town. The supply train and the supporting battalion finally get into the town where they will be safe from Spanish attacks. In the south, I move that unit of lancers down and around the Spanish cavalry so that I can attempt to threaten the Spanish supplies that are moving behind the mountain massif. In the French center, I continue to shift lines to help reslot rallied units so that I can continue the attack. I told you that this is going to take several turns, and it is. If the units had not routed previously, I would have cleared the heights by now. The French continue to suffer from Spanish bombardment, which is going to hurt them in the long run, I think. The Hussar unit is moved down to the center of the enemy lines to do a quick reconnaissance. Once I move down there, I discover there's more infantry formed behind that artillery, and also more protecting the bridge than I had initially expected. They should definitely get the MVP award for units in this game. The cuirassiers actually stage a charge to attempt to clear the bridge approach. This will clear up that access route so that French forces can get across. I need to check the line of sight of this one artillery unit to ensure that it can bombard the units that are protecting that bridge. In the center of the line, the Spaniards keep reinforcing their artillery and moving that to reinforce their front line. You can see me struggling here trying to recreate this line. It does take time. I have to sort units out, and I have to make sure they're in command and control radius. And I know I've said this multiple times, but I have to deal with that ever-present Spanish artillery. Not much is happening here except that I'm under fire. I will increase the speed of this clip so I can get through this portion and show you the northern part of the battlefield. Having been in the cavalry most of my career, I'm looking forward to this. The problem is there's no prediction. That does not look good for the cavalry unit. And as it turns out, the losses are 100 attacker to 68 defender. In the north, they continue their slow but steady advance toward the town. The Spanish defenders on the heights get reinforced, and the bridge defenders are reorganizing. The good news is that 6 of 11 units are undisordered, so that means my attacks will come off more effectively. I actually have some artillery to fire now, and so the Spanish come under fire up on the hills. Spanish supply units are actually running away, and that gives me a good feeling. It puts them farther away from their units and makes it less likely that the Spanish will be resupplied once they run out of ammo. One unit continues to run. Decimation of that unit is next. The heavy guns and supply train move to support the upcoming envelopment, and they draw the ire of the Spanish artillery. A unit from the 1st Brigade moves behind the peak and gets into position. The commander follows with a majority of the brigade. The division commander, sensing that this is going to be the main effort, moves to follow it. Suchet takes the quartermaster guard and a battalion from the 2nd Brigade with designs on removing the linchpin of the Spanish defense on that highest peak. And that's it for movement for the French. The northern front is quiescent for now, so it's on to the Allied turn. The Spanish stage a spoiling attack in the north. Let's assume for atmosphere that this is not a wonky AI, but instead a courier that got lost, and the Spanish moved up without orders. In the south, commanders move to critical points on the battlefield, and the Spanish move reinforcements up. Fire combat rages around the board with little effect. The Hussars, however, are surprised by an artillery battery that is turned on them and fired into their ranks. When I moved them there, I didn't think the artillery had that visibility. In a good break for the French, more units are reorganized, so it's time for the attack to go in. The routed unit in the woods is running in circles, screaming about the end of the world. The Hussars are making a move to get out from under the artillery and decide to take on the vulnerable supply train out in the open. The Lancers move forward to try and get into the Spanish rear and get into a lot of possible trouble. More infantry has been discovered. The cuirassiers pull back, maybe run back, to regroup so that the survivors of the unit can continue in future battles. The 1st Brigade moves south to finish the relief in place and gets musketry in the face for all their trouble. Now I have to figure out how to break this Spanish traffic jam and move into the city with the other 2 objectives. The remainder of the 1st Brigade moves to rejoin its comrades and bolster the attack. Now I'm checking lines of sight to make sure these units go exactly where I needed them to go. Now a 2nd battery of artillery moves to the south to support the units at the bridge. This is shaping up to be a major attack. The attack on the Spanish center begins with counter-battery fire. The infantry column on the road orients itself for the attack and draws Spanish defensive fire after they move. And here it is, French columns moving against the enemy in search of victory and glory. Suchet pulls logistical assets into one hex and then adds an infantry unit as a guard. In the north it's still quiet, but the French continue to improve the northern defense by putting units into line. The French continue to pour in fire on that Spanish battalion and commander that are in the open. The Lancers score an easy win, as do the Hussars, but that artillery from the heights is a killer, and the Hussars suffer more losses. The Spanish center now faces the prospect of being out of supply. Now they no longer have trains. A hasty attack against the bridge approach goes in, but the French take heavy losses. The attack against the heights, where an entire brigade is going against one position, has much greater success and rids the French of that artillery threat. And then, in the blink of an eye, it happens. The Spanish line collapses both on the hills and at the bridge. In the north, the Spanish keep fighting and continue to move units up to the attack. The Spanish battery up on the hill, feeling suddenly alone, turns their gun to face the oncoming French assault. Otherwise, the main part of the Spanish effort now is in the north. And now the French get even more good news. One of the units that's been flailing around in the woods decides to head down towards the sound of the guns. Also, it looks like 5 more units have become undisordered and no one's routed for a change. And look what we have on turn 11. The routing unit finally comes home. In the north, I keep the exposed Spanish battalions under fire, hoping to keep them disorganized, or even better yet, get them to rout. I pull a high fatigue unit back to the town in an attempt to get it to recover. In the south, I try to take advantage of the Spanish line breaking. I take a lower fatigue unit out and push it across the river. Then I add another unit, as there are 2 objectives, and I can't pass up this opportunity to seize those points. I push 2 battalions down south to try and destroy the routing units. Then I ensure that the brigade remains within the commander's radius. The hussars take their captured train and move it to the north, rubbing it in the faces of all those that are stuck there. The lancers do the same in an attempt to starve the Spanish. The cavalry brigade commander can't resist and orders the cuirassier remnants to charge. This should triple their combat power since they actually got to use the charge command. The main attack continues, and 3 battalions, a brigade commander, and a skirmish company advance to attempt to clear the heights and discover more artillery. I failed to account for the uphill movement costs for the single battalion, and it ends up with its flank to the enemy. The artillery in the French rear on those high points continues to search for targets as the assault blocks its line of sight. The 2 cavalry charges succeed initially beyond my expectations. Then I made an error. I got greedy. Cavalry units can choose to continue a successful charge, and so I did with the cuirassier, and failed. This renders them almost combat ineffective now. I moved back to the north to continue the assault on the heights. Although I took heavy losses, I destroyed the battery and revealed more of the Spanish position. And now it's time for hexagonal hopscotch, because it looks like the Spanish are attacking all across the map. The good news is that in the north, a couple of units actually do rout. The Spanish look like they want to take control of those heights again, and so they start moving infantry up to assault the folks that I have on those positions. I get the impression that my game opponent is having just as much difficulty trying to figure out where the battle lines are drawn as I am. In an interesting shift, the French are now on the right side of the battlefield, and the Spanish are on the left side of the battlefield, exactly opposite of where we were at the beginning of the game. And in a surprise twist, the Spanish unit that retreated into town now reveals itself and fires on units across the river. My main attack comes under heavy fire and, get ready for it, routs again. So to begin this turn, I do a quick scan of the units to see what I can recover. It does not look good. I have to maintain my focus. Mission first. I do a check of a unit to see if I can reach the objectives on the far side of the river. It's good news. I can, and I get behind the enemy that's blocking the way to one objective. Then I think about it, and I make a quick check of the other unit. And holy cow, in one fell swoop, I turn things around, and I'm close to seizing the two objectives on the far side of the river. That's 300 points. The tactics here are very ahistorical, but it's thrilling. And did I say I can possibly add 300 points for the French next turn? Well, I'm going to say it again. Now this unit of artillery up on the heights is looking around for targets, but it can't shoot at that unit of artillery that's been barring my way. I quickly withdraw the cuirassier across the bridge so it will look like I'm attacking and not really running and getting out of line of fire. The division commander moves up to watch an attack with one of the escort battalions. Routing units attempt to seek shelter and find places to recover. One of my last formed battalions attacks and manages to destroy the artillery unit that's been a thorn in my side. And then it's the Spanish turn. And what's this? The Spanish go on the offensive to retake the heights. Let me rephrase that. The Spanish go on a successful offensive to retake the heights. The good news is that although this battalion is forced back, no one routs. The other units that are routing just keep on running. On to the start of 13. What can I do to counter the latest Spanish attacks on the heights? The first thing is to reinforce the effort with the division commander so I have better morale there. And next I move some additional line units up so I can protect that division commander and start building an attack for the heights. My tactical options are getting increasingly limited. I start pulling a lot of vulnerable units in to a central position to help protect them. supplies in particular. The skirmish company moves out as a screen and also a general speed bump. Now I've put together an attack of roughly 1,000 men. Hopefully that will drive the Spanish off of the heights. Well, I made a mistake. I failed to attack with all of the units and got a less than satisfactory result. But the front in the north stays quiet. There won't be much activity on this front until the end of the game. Now it's the Spanish turn. Bah, I thought I had a formed unit on the objective near the bridge, but the Spanish pull off the heights and retake it. Plus, the 1st Brigade commander takes a bullet. This is not good for me, as it limits rally options even further for one turn. The bridge crossing is now more vulnerable than before. Spanish skirmishers keep up the fire on isolated French units. And then it happens. 2 more French units rout. Now my options are even more limited. Turn 14. Now we're getting very close to the end of the game, and I have even more limited options. A skirmish company quickly moves over to put itself in between the Spanish forces and the vulnerable artillery and supplies that are to the north of the bridge approach. I scrape up another battalion from the rear and throw it into position. It braves a corridor of fire as they move. I've cut out a lot of the footage here where I am checking command radii and checking to see who is next to who and where the brigades are located, because this is really a dire situation for the French. Units from the heights give up their hard-fought position and move down to try and save the bridge approach. On the northern front, the Spanish are too weak and they're attacking across open ground, so this will not be much of a problem for me to defend this objective. I'm quite happy where I am here and in defensible positions. Back in the center, limited attacks force Spanish skirmish companies out of the way, and this Spanish battalion is almost isolated. The French attack ends up in a draw, but another leader becomes a casualty. I'm rapidly reaching a tipping point morale-wise. I attempt to attack right here, but one unit is detached because it's out of command range, and so it can't attack. So I go in with what I have. And it's another failure. The Spanish are holding position like T.J. Jackson at Bull Run. The Spanish continue to reform wherever they can, but they come under fire from active French forces. Casualties continue to mount on both sides as both sides keep firing. Now it's time to check the butcher's bill. And 5 more units decide to rout. Yes, there were more French units in the south that also routed. The situation in the north is frozen, so I won't be devoting any more time to that. The French handily won that front. Turn 14 was a disaster for the French. 5 units rout, and that's a lot of points that cannot be recovered. I will attempt to move routed units to be around commanders, but since the chain of command is now broken in many places, that won't help. The corps commander tries to contribute to rallying units, but unless he's stacked with them, it won't work. The horse artillery, located next to the bridge approaches, can't unlimber and fire due to the proximity of Spanish infantry. Since I can't break them with artillery fire, I'll take French units and move around and behind the Spanish to attack the open objective. Getting that will be crucial. Vulnerable units continue to try to get out of the Spanish way and hide behind formed French units. The attack finally goes in, with the division commander wisely holding back, as the brigade commander is present. The objective is now back in my hands. That's more of a moral as opposed to a psychological and physical success. In another surprise move, the Allies move up, take the supply unit and the bridge. More points for them. I just noticed that I failed to get points for the southern objective because I had a unit there that was detached and it was not in command and control. Therefore, I lose that one. And the end result? It's a draw. Given the number of glitches that the Spanish threw into my plan, I am surprised that I came out with a draw. Had I had a formed unit on that southern objective, I would have won a minor victory. So what are my thoughts on this game overall? It's a good game in a tough scenario. It's a different playthrough consistently. I've played this probably 15 or 20 times and gotten a different result each time. The AI threw a curveball at me and slowed down my attack. That resulted in too many routes and too many leader losses as I continued to push the attack to make up for lost time. I had a good feel for the game after playing a couple of times, but I'm still learning some of the small rules, the ones like detached units and objectives. I will be moving on to larger battles, and I'm interested to see and how the chain of command issues influence what happens in the larger scenarios. I enjoy having the limited line of sight, and I enjoy the computer handling that. That makes the scenario more interesting. All in all, I would say that this is a good offering by Wargame Design, and that it's a game that you should add to your stables if you're interested in Napoleonic warfare. My interest lies mainly in the Danube and the Germanies because that's where I was stationed, but this is fun and has a lot of interesting twists to it. Thank you for watching. Like this if you can, refer it to someone else, and we will see you next time.